Okay, welcome back to Top Tuesdays. Today I'm going to be talking about my top 5 favourite Richard Linklater films to kind of celebrate the recent announcement of the Before trilogy coming out on Blu-ray next year. We recently had Boyhood on Blu-ray from Criterion. I thought I'd talk about my top 5 favourite Richard Linklater films. So again, not what I think are the 5 best films from him, but my 5 favourites. So let's just get right into it. Number 5, Everybody Wants Some. Which is his most recent film that came out this year. I had a really good cinema experience going to see this. I went to see this at my local pier cinema. The cinema on the pier on the beach of my hometown. Really cool and intimate setting. It felt perfect for the kind of film this is, and I loved it. It's about these college teenagers, not even teenagers, they're young adults in their 20s in some cases, I think. But either way, these young adults, and you have this baseball team who are kind of waiting to start college, things like that, and they're just partying, you know, sleeping around, drinking, you know, just playing, you know, ping pong and going out for parties, and that is the whole film. That's all it is. I mean, there's no real plot, there's no narrative thread, there's no 3-act structure. It's just these characters, and that is it. And I loved it. I thought it was brilliant. It's what Richard Linklater really excels at. It's his strength, is the characters that he can write and the realism he is able to inject into those words, and the casts that he chooses to embody those words that bring those characters to life, where you feel like for 2 hours you're kind of being brought in on the fun and you're hanging out with these characters for a few days, and that's all it is. And I thought that it was brilliant. I loved it. Huge fan of it, and it shot right up to the top of you know, my favorites list in terms of his films. Number 4, Before Sunset from 2004, the second of the Before trilogy, where we catch up with Jesse and Celine 9 years after the original film, and I think that it's such a brilliant, more mature kind of progression of their story from the original film. And I love how it's told in real time, and you have these two characters walking around Paris and having this discussion, and there are elements of their relationship that formed in the first film, but they're both completely different people at the same time. And so there's this real kind of, almost kind of haunting kind of change that happens between them, where it feels the same but it feels completely different at the same time, and again, a more adult take on their story together. And the ending is just incredible. I love the ending, and it's just a phenomenal film. I think it is the best of the Before trilogy, and I love it. It's a great film. Number 3, Dazed and Confused. Basically, take everything I said about Everybody Wants Some and just apply it to this film, only I prefer this film. Again, you have these kids who, it's the last day of high school, so slightly younger than the characters in Everybody Wants Some, which is kind of a spiritual sequel to Dazed and Confused in a way. And you have all these characters, and it's all set over the night of, you know, the final day of school, and so you have all these characters getting ready to leave school, and then they get ready to go out and party, and you have kind of the younger kind of character who comes in, who kind of gets to experience the more older kind of adult way of partying and things like that. So you get kind of the rite of passage thing where the younger characters get to hang out with the older characters, and then you have even older characters, like one played by Matthew McConaughey in his screen debut, who was a great character, who's kind of like a hanger-on. He's older than everybody else, but he still like kind of hangs around with the younger kids to kind of recapture his youth. And you know, the immortal lines, alright, we're born in this film, and he's just perfect, and the rest of the cast is perfect. It's such a strong cast, it's so much fun, and again, you spend 2 hours just hanging out with these characters, and you feel like you're along for the ride, you're along for the fun, you've been let in on this kind of little group, and you get to kind of experience this whole night and early hours of the next morning, and it's just it's ultimate entertainment. I absolutely loved it when I first saw it. It's an incredible film. I think it just really sums up that kind of that part of our youths, you know, where we were so carefree, and that to me is really appealing and relatable. Number 2, Boyhood. Yes, Boyhood, the film that everyone seems to hate. It's almost like an Avatar kind of thing. It came out, everyone loved it, and it became the biggest film of all time. And then like a few months later, no one loved it, everyone hated it, and yet seemingly it made more money than any film in the history of the world. Go figure. Not quite that bad, but you know, Boyhood, a lot of people are not fans of this film, which is fine. I love it, but I've still yet to revisit it. I've only seen it once, and it's still in my top 5 favorite films of all time. That's how much of an impression it had on me, and by that virtue, it should be my number 1. But the reason it isn't is because I haven't rewatched it yet, and I don't know if that kind of effect is gonna fade when I watch it for a second time. I have the Criterion Blu-ray right there on top of my you know, chest of drawers. I should watch it, but I'm waiting for the right moment to do it and kind of dive back into it. So you know, maybe within the next week this might shoot to my top spot. I don't know, but I wanted to be fair and put it at number 2 because I'd only seen it once. But it made such an impression on me. I can't imagine anyone being able to sit through this film and not find at least something they relate to. And I know, you know, again, going off CP, if you're watching, his kind of criticism of the film is that it doesn't have the 3-act structure. It doesn't have the kind of narrative where you have an arc with the character, where, you know, it has a flaw at the beginning and it, you know, it learns something by the end. But that is what life is like. Life does not have a 3-act structure. And so this film it's an experimental film. It really is. You know, it's just capturing you know, segments of a life, snapshots of a childhood. You know, it focuses in on the moments which aren't even that interesting at times, and you really just you follow this boy, you know, across the years. You see him grow up, and it's very film-like in a lot of ways. It has very little drama, if any. You know, there's a little bit in the middle there with a kind of abusive kind of stepfather, but even that is kind of just skated over, because I always wonder if Boyhood is meant to be this film where we're looking at these memories that kind of just stuck in this kid's head for some reason as he grew up. They weren't particularly that, you know, memorable maybe even, but they're things that he remembers. Oh yeah, like there's a scene where he's walking down this alleyway and this girl comes up and talks to him and they start chatting, and it doesn't lead anywhere. We don't see her again, but it's maybe just one of those things that just sticks in this kid's head, and we're getting a representation of that. This kind of, you know, the fragmented memories that you kind of collect throughout your life and then displayed in this kind of, this epic kind of 2.5-hour film. Anyway, I love it. It's number 2. Number 1, Before Sunrise. And again, I think Before Sunset is a better film, but I go for Before Sunrise as my sentimental favourite, because it absolutely represents this idealized, idyllic, romanticized version of romance that I think perhaps only a film could really achieve and pull off, unless you're one of those very lucky people who could ever experience something as thrilling as what happens in Before Sunrise. These two characters of Jesse and Celine who meet on a train and decide to spend the day together in Vienna, and that's all the film is, just those two walking around and talking to each other, and it's just a wonderful film. I love the chemistry between Ethan Hawke and Julie Delpy. I love the things that they talk about, which is the things that people in their early 20s talk about and kind of philosophize over, and you know, it's just a really fun, beautiful film to watch unfold. And again, it's that sentimental kind of idea of romance and that kind of love at first sight kind of dream that a lot of people have, and it is really represented in this film in a really fun and entertaining way. I think it's just so cozy to sit down with this film and just enjoy it, and enjoy watching these characters connect and kind of fall for each other. And then once we get to the second film, it's a bit more of a mature take on that, and then we get to the third film, and it just kind of shatters everything that kind of was built up in the first film in terms of this, again, idealized version of romance or vision of romance. So, but I think it's my favorite for now, until I rewatch this one, Boyhood, and kind of maybe see if it is as good as it was when I first saw it 2 years ago. If it is, then it will go up to the top spot. But either way, Richard Linklater is one of my favorite directors. In fact, I'll say it, he's my favorite director right now. And that spot was held by Wes Anderson, but he just keeps nailing it, man. Before Midnight, Boyhood, Everybody Wants Some. What an incredible run of 3 films he's had over the past few years. Like, just absolutely nailed it. Like, 10 out of 10, 10 out of 10, 10 out of 10. How does someone do that, you know? But for me, anyway, as a viewer, that's how good his last few films have been. And honorable mention to films like Slacker, which I think is a great film, and Tape, which is a really underrated, underseen film, which is kind of like, I didn't know whether that was a masterpiece or a car wreck when I first watched it, but I'm a big fan of that film. And I think that Linklater is just a phenomenal director and a great storyteller first and foremost. So thank you for watching. Leave your list down below if you have one. Heck, make a video response if you feel inclined to. I'd love to see it. Big fan of Linklater, so it's always fun to hear other people talking about his films. And I'll see you in the next video.
So you might say he's a really nice guy, really, but if fucking don't cut shit with me. He says he's really cool, but I think he's a tool.